Upon hearing of Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse, South Carolina faced the end of the Civil War.
Oh, I'm a good old rebel, now that's just what I am. I'm glad I fought again, I only wish we'd won. I ain't asked any pardon for anything I've done.
The war's painful outcome for South Carolina included more than 23,000 lives lost. And the financial loss of 400,000 slaves, for whom the war's end meant freedom.
As the Civil War came to an end, the United States faced major social and economic challenges. Both the North and the South needed to rebuild. But problems in the South were greater. The South's economy, based on slavery, was dead. Many questioned what would happen to the nearly 4 million freedmen. Before his death, Lincoln introduced a plan for reconstructing the South. He had hoped to lay the groundwork for rebuilding the shattered land. Lincoln favored a soft approach to the South, but leaders in Congress known as the Radical Republicans wanted a stricter policy to prevent Southern planters from regaining control of their governments.
And freed with no land, no money, no formal education, freed and told you're free to go.
Many in South Carolina feared the end of slavery meant revolution. Freed African Americans, while not planning a revolution, did assert their new status. South Carolina men, hardened by combat in one of the 19th century's bloodiest conflicts, refused to accept the verdict of history, and white insurgency exploded across the state as broken fragments of Confederate regiments sought to intimidate newly freed African Americans.
Congress created a new agency, the Freedmen's Bureau. It was meant to help freed slaves find jobs and resolve disputes between blacks and whites. The Bureau was also responsible for creating schools for African Americans. After Lincoln's assassination, Andrew Johnson became president. Like Lincoln, Johnson proposed a lenient plan of reconstruction for the South. The radical Republicans in Congress quickly clashed with Johnson over this plan. They refused to accept former Confederate leaders into the House and Senate. Congress passed a bill granting citizenship rights to African Americans. Congress also passed the 14th Amendment, which granted equal rights to African Americans.
It was in this atmosphere of despair that 6 Confederate veterans gathered at a local law office in the poverty-stricken town of Pulaski, Tennessee. On a June night in 1866, the Ku Klux Klan was born. Surprisingly, the origins of the Klan had little to do with the menacing behavior for which it would become known.
It was founded as a purely social fraternity, very much like a college fraternity, but without the college, purely as a source of amusement.
Using the home of a prominent Pulaski citizen as a meeting place, the founders were bursting with ideas for the new brotherhood they had formed.
They were college men, and college students learned their Greek and Latin, and so they picked a Greek word, Kuklos, meaning circle, and found it had great alliterative possibilities, added clan to it. Ku Klux Klan, isn't that a wonderful sound?
To further the mystery, the founders decreed that all public appearances were to be made in disguise. Outlandish costumes consisting of flowing sheets, masks, and hats were devised. Absurd-sounding titles such as Grand Cyclops and Grand Magi were created for office holders. New members were to be called ghouls. The founders presented themselves to the town with theatrical flair. The sight of costumed men parading through the streets of Pulaski piqued curiosity. Local men were quick to join. As the Klan grew, mysterious night rides began. The early rides took on a supernatural aspect. Attempting to frighten newly freed slaves, hooded Klansmen claimed to be ghosts of Confederate dead.